You feel it long before you name it. A quiet weight that moves behind your thoughts and waits for moments of stillness. It does not shout. It lingers. It watches you from the corner of your inner eye. You know this presence. You have tried to outrun it, to explain it away, to bury it in routines and noise. Yet it returns, patient as nightfall, carrying questions you once hoped would fade with time. And in that return, something in you awakens, a thin tremor of recognition that you are standing before a threshold you can no longer ignore. You sense it when your life becomes too silent or too honest, when an old memory rises from the bottom of your chest, when a familiar fear returns with a new face. It is the shadow, the part of you that has followed every step you have taken, collecting the pieces you refuse to carry. You feel its breath when you close your eyes. You feel its footsteps when you pause between decisions. And though it unnerves you, there is a strange tenderness in its presence, as if it is trying to speak in a language you used to know but forgot. You notice how it tests you in subtle ways. Old patterns reappear just when you thought you had outgrown them. Emotional wounds open without warning. Relationships mirror truths you are not ready to see. Life seems to press its fingers into the same bruise again and again. And a part of you wonders why. Why these repetitions? Why these echoes? Why this circular path through the same forest of doubts? Something in you whispers that it cannot be coincidence. Something deeper is calling for your attention. There are moments when this presence feels like a shadowed figure at the edge of a dream, waiting for you to approach. Other times it feels like a reflection in a dark mirror, shifting with your breath, patient and steady. You sense that it does not want to harm you. It wants you to turn toward it, yet the fear of doing so is real. Opening that door feels like stepping into a room without a lamp, a room where all the things you suppressed might rise like smoke and surround you. You walk through your days carrying questions that drift just beneath words. Why does the same fear return? Why do you sabotage the things you love? Why do old emotions resurface when life seems peaceful? You tell yourself that you should be stronger, more healed, more clear. But some nights, when the world finally quiets, you feel a soft ache in the center of your being. A reminder that the work is not done. A reminder that healing does not follow a straight line, and that the soul has its own seasons. Something inside you knows that the shadow is not your enemy. It is your history, your pain, your potential, your forgotten power, all woven together into a single presence waiting to be acknowledged. And yet you hesitate. You sense that turning toward it will change you in ways you cannot predict. You sense that you will not be the same once you face what you avoided for years. And still, beneath it all, something calls your name. It calls you deeper. It calls you inward. It calls you toward the truth you have always carried. And in that call, a doorway begins to open, thin as a line of dawn at the edge of a long night. You begin to sense that the shadow is not a single thing. It is a landscape, an inner forest shaped by forgotten emotions and abandoned selves. When you walk through it, you feel the presence of memories that never found closure, desires that were silenced before they were understood, fears that wrapped themselves around your decisions until you could no longer tell where they ended and you began. This forest has always been with you. You carry it behind your ribs, and every step you take in life sends a faint echo through its trees. At first you try to clear the path by force. You try to be decisive, to be rational, to be stronger than the parts of you that tremble. But the forest is not cleared by will alone. Each tree represents something you once pushed away, a feeling you judged, a truth you denied, a vulnerability you covered with armor. The more you try to cut your way through, the more lost you feel. And slowly you realize that this place does not respond to control. It responds to honesty. It responds to presence. There is a point where the forest feels like night, a deep, moonless night where everything familiar loses shape. You sense the echo of old versions of yourself moving in the dark. Some carry disappointment, some carry anger, some carry longing that you never dared to voice. They walk beside you like silent companions, waiting for you to acknowledge them. They do not vanish when you ignore them. They wait. They want to be seen. And if you avoid them long enough, they begin to appear in your waking life as patterns, impulses, sudden reactions that make you wonder who is moving through your hands. When Jung spoke of the shadow, this was the truth beneath his words. The shadow is not darkness imposed upon you. It is the unlived life within you. The life you could not carry at the time. The emotions you were not ready to feel. The instincts you feared would ruin your self-image. The truths you believed were too heavy to confront. They fell behind you like fragments. Yet each fragment carried a spark of your vitality. Over time, those sparks gathered and formed a presence of their own, a silent companion woven from everything you refused to touch. You can feel this presence when you react more intensely than the situation requires. A small comment cuts too deep. A simple delay enrages you. A gesture of affection feels threatening. These reactions rise like flames from a quiet fire. They tell you that something within you has been waiting to speak. They tell you that the moment for silence has passed. And though it scares you, a deeper part of you recognizes the truth in it. You cannot outrun your own fire forever. Every mirror becomes a doorway into yourself, and the shadow uses each one to ask you a single question. Will you look? Will you turn toward what you feel? Will you allow the truth behind your reactions to rise? You begin to notice how your inner world behaves like an alchemical process. One emotion dissolves another. One insight sheds light on a corner you thought was empty. One acceptance softens a wound that has ached for years. The shadow participates in this process by holding the raw material of your transformation. It holds the lead that must be heated, broken down, purified. And though the fire feels harsh, it is the only way to retrieve the gold hidden inside those darkened fragments. Sometimes this gold appears as clarity. You suddenly understand why a particular fear has followed you. You understand why certain relationships always pull you into the same roles. You understand why a memory still burns when you touch it. These moments feel like light filtering into a room you forgot existed. Yet the shadow does not grant this light freely. It waits for your sincerity. It waits for your willingness to sit with discomfort. It waits for you to stop treating it as an enemy. Only then does it soften. Only then does it begin to release its grip on the patterns that bind you. This release is not sudden. It unfolds slowly, like dawn spreading across a silent landscape. You feel the first light long before you see the sun. The air warms. The darkness thins. And you know that something is shifting inside you. This is the essence of the test. The shadow does not test your strength in the way the world taught you to be strong. It tests your capacity to face the truth of your own heart. It tests your ability to sit with your fears without turning away. It tests your willingness to embrace the parts of you that feel inconvenient or frightening. It tests your courage to remain open when every impulse tells you to shut down. And in that test, you begin to see who you truly are beneath all the roles you have learned to play. There comes a moment when the forest inside you begins to change. The night remains, but the stars return. The air grows gentle. You sense the sound of water somewhere in the distance. A river that has always been there, flowing beneath your thoughts, carrying the stories you have lived and the ones you have yet to live. When you move toward it, the trees begin to part. The ground softens beneath your feet. The entire landscape feels as if it is breathing with you. This river represents the deeper current of your life. It carries your instincts, your intuition, your unspoken wisdom. The shadow has guarded this river for years, keeping you from drowning in it before you were ready. But now the current feels different. It feels welcoming. It feels like truth. When you kneel beside it and touch its surface, the water reflects you in a way that no mirror ever could. Not as who you pretend to be, but as who you are beneath everything you have carried. And yet, even in this clarity, the forest remains. The shadow remains. The tests remain. Not as punishment, but as guidance. Because the shadow knows something you often forget. You cannot step into the fullness of your own light until you face the places where you hid it. And somewhere deep within, you already feel the next step calling. You feel the first movement inside you like a shift in the wind. It begins quietly, almost imperceptibly, as if the air around your thoughts has thickened. You sense a pressure in your chest, not painful, but dense, like something long held is reaching for the surface. For a moment you try to ignore it. You distract yourself. You move quickly. Yet the feeling follows you through each movement, brushing against your awareness the way a branch brushes your arm when you walk through a dim forest path. You know this sensation. It is the beginning of a return, the moment when the shadow stirs and asks for your attention again. You notice it most clearly in your reactions. A sudden spark of irritation rises where calm should be. A wave of sadness drifts in without reason. A memory you never fully understood knocks softly from the inside. These reactions pass through your body like small fires. They heat your breath. They tighten your hands. They linger behind your eyes. And in that heat you feel the presence of something unspoken, something that has waited long enough to remain silent. You realize that this is not random. It is the psyche's way of signaling that a forgotten part of you wants to be seen. You feel the discomfort as if it were a thick fog settling around you. It blurs your sense of direction. It makes simple moments feel heavy. You try to keep your pace steady, but the fog pulls you inward, forcing you to slow down. The more you resist, the thicker it becomes. And in the tension between wanting to move forward and feeling pulled backward, you begin to understand that the shadow does not test you with dramatic events. It tests you with the subtle truths you refuse to acknowledge. It tests you with the emotions you minimize. It tests you with the quiet whispers that rise in the spaces where you least expect them. Psychologically, this is the point where the unconscious begins to speak in symbols rather than words. You may not hear a voice, but you feel a gesture. A memory becomes sharper. A dream becomes more vivid. A familiar fear seems to gain weight. Jung understood this threshold as the moment when the personal unconscious touches the edge of consciousness, seeking integration. The psyche does not push without purpose. Every discomfort is a signal that a part of your inner world is preparing to step forward. It is the moment when the shadow makes its presence known through sensation rather than thought. In this stage, the imagery becomes undeniable. You may feel as if you are walking deeper into a forest at dusk. The path beneath your feet is soft, padded with leaves that have fallen from seasons you barely remember. The trees rise around you like tall silhouettes. Their branches form quiet arches overhead. The light fades gently, not with threat, but with invitation. You feel as if something waits just beyond your line of sight. Something patient. Something familiar. The presence feels like a figure standing behind you, not imposing, but observant. It carries a kind of ancient knowing, a recognition that makes your heart beat a little slower. In this forest, the fog becomes a mirror. It reveals outlines of emotions you buried. You begin to see shapes forming within it. A younger version of your anger. A forgotten sadness. A longing you never named. They hover in the mist like reflections on water. When you step closer, they sharpen. When you pull back, they blur. You sense that these images are not here to frighten you. They are here to remind you that nothing you carry is without meaning. Every shadow has a story. Every discomfort has a voice. And every voice in the shadow belongs to a moment of your life that never received closure. At times you want to run from this fog. You want to clear it quickly, to find the sun, to leave the forest behind. But something stops you. A quiet instinct, a subtle wisdom, a feeling that if you turn away now, the fog will follow you into every room of your life. You realize that this moment is a threshold, and thresholds are never crossed by force. They are crossed by presence. You feel your breath slow. You feel your mind soften. You feel a gentle readiness rising from a deeper part of you, the part that has waited years to finally listen. The discomfort grows softer when you accept it. What once felt like pressure now feels like contact. What once felt like threat now feels like touch. The fog thins slightly, and you sense the faintest glimmer of light behind it, like a candle hidden within a distant window. You cannot see the full flame yet, but its warmth reaches you. You feel it in your chest. You feel it in your spine. It is the beginning of an inner opening, a recognition that the shadow is not here to imprison you. It is here to reveal you to yourself. You realize that this first stage is not a confrontation. It is a return to the parts of yourself you abandoned because you did not know how to hold them. The shadow tests you by asking whether you will run again or whether you will stay, whether you will hide from your own truth or whether you will let it rise. This is the moment when the forest grows quiet, waiting for your answer, waiting for your breath to match its rhythm. You stand still. You feel the fog settle, and somewhere inside you, a door slowly begins to open. You feel the second movement arrive not as pressure, but as clarity. It comes with the strange sensation that the fog inside you has shifted, revealing the faint outline of something that has always been there. It is subtle, almost fragile, like the first thin beam of dawn filtering through dense branches. You pause without meaning to. You breathe more deeply without instruction. You sense that the shadow is no longer calling from behind you. It is standing before you now, quiet and steady, waiting for you to notice its shape. At this stage, the emotion changes. It is not as heavy as before. It feels more like a truth rising from the floor of your being, a sudden understanding of why a certain fear repeats, a glimpse of a memory that explains a habit you could never break. The insight does not come fully formed. It comes in fragments, a gesture you remember, a sentence someone once said, a moment you believed you had forgotten. These fragments drift upward like small sparks from a hidden fire. You try to ignore them, but they continue to rise until they reach your awareness with a soft but undeniable glow. When you turn your attention toward these sparks, you feel something loosen inside you. A tension unravels. A knot you carried for years begins to soften. Jung understood this as the natural unfolding of the psyche when you cease resisting your own inner truth. The shadow begins to reorganize itself, no longer as a threat, but as a teacher. And the lesson it brings is simple. The parts of you that cause the most pain are the ones that want your presence the most. You feel this presence take form like light taking shape through smoke. The shadow appears not as a monster, but as a figure carved from your own history. You sense its outline, a familiar slope of the shoulders, a posture you once carried, a silence that resembles your own. It watches you without judgment. Its eyes feel like mirrors that show you not who you are now, but who you were when you first learned to hide. And as you study that reflection, something inside you softens with recognition. You are seeing yourself before the world taught you to divide your soul into acceptable and unacceptable parts. The forest around you shifts in response. The fog thins. The trees seem taller, less threatening, almost protective. A faint path appears at your feet, glowing softly like embers spread among fallen leaves. You feel drawn to it, not because it leads to safety, but because it feels true. This path represents the unspoken story of your inner life. As you walk this path, the river from earlier appears again, but this time it is not hidden beneath the forest. It runs beside you, its surface smooth, its current slow. When you look into the water, you see reflections of your past rising to meet you. Not the events themselves, but the emotional imprints they left behind. A look of disappointment, a moment of betrayal, a childhood fear that followed you into adulthood, disguised as perfectionism or withdrawal. Psychologically, this is the point when the unconscious asks for integration. Your mind is ready to see what it once avoided. The shadow is no longer hiding. It is unveiling. The grief you ran from is not as heavy as the running itself. The anger you suppressed is not as dangerous as the tension that comes from suppression. Each realization falls into your awareness like drops of rain into a still pool. Soft, clear, transformative. In this moment, the imagery becomes more vivid. You may see a door forming at the base of an ancient tree. Its wood is dark and cracked, but a thin line of light spills through its center. You may see a stone placed beside the river with markings that resemble the patterns of your own thoughts. You may see a small flame burning on the forest floor without consuming anything around it. These images are not random. The door represents the boundary between what you know and what you fear to know. The stone represents the weight you have carried. The flame represents the transformation waiting beneath your resistance. When you lean closer to the door, you feel the presence of your shadow behind it. Not hiding, waiting. It wants you to open it. It wants you to step into the room you locked away in your own mind. But part of you hesitates. You fear what you might find. You fear that the truth inside that room will shatter the image you built for yourself. And still, something deeper pulls you forward. The truth does not threaten the self. Only the illusion of the self. The shadow is not here to break you. It is here to free you from the narrow identity that has kept you from becoming whole. As you place your hand on the door, you feel warmth. Not heat. Warmth. A familiar warmth that feels like an old memory of safety. This warmth tells you that the shadow is not a prison. It is a guardian of the parts of you that were too tender to survive the world without protection. Now that you are stronger, those parts want to return. You open the door, and the forest grows silent. The air thickens with meaning. The river slows. The light shifts. You step inside with a breath that feels like the first honest breath you have taken in years. Inside the room you find not darkness, but dimness, as if the light has been waiting for you to create its purpose. You see shapes on the floor, memories resting like stones, emotions folded like cloth, truths wrapped in silence. And in the center, you see the shadow figure again, but this time it kneels, not as an adversary, but as a part of your own soul returning to you. You realize that this stage is the beginning of intimacy with yourself, the beginning of seeing the truth not with fear, but with compassion. The shadow tests you by revealing what you once believed you could not hold. And yet, as you stand in that quiet room, you find that you can. The fear begins to dissolve. The fog lifts, and somewhere deep within, a new path begins to form, leading you further inward toward the next unfolding of your truth. You feel the third movement rise like a deeper tide, not sudden, but inevitable, as if something within you has finally decided that silence is no longer an option. The room you entered begins to breathe with you. Its dimness no longer feels empty. It feels inhabited by truths you have not fully recognized yet. You sense them in the walls, in the air, in the quiet weight of the space. There is a feeling that you have crossed a threshold that cannot be undone. Not because you have seen something frightening, but because you have seen something real. This stage carries a different kind of tension. It is not the disorientation of the fog or the tremor of the first insights. It is a slow unveiling. You begin to notice details you overlooked before. A gesture from your past that shaped your sense of worth. A wound you minimized that still influences your choices. A belief planted long ago that still governs the way you love, the way you protect yourself, the way you hide. Emotion becomes your guide now. You feel its texture shifting. A sadness you thought you had resolved returns with a softer tone. A fear you tried to outrun sits beside you like an old friend. They no longer overwhelm you. They feel like companions who have carried a secret for far too long. You begin to understand that these emotions were never obstacles. They were messages. They were the psyche's way of calling you back to the places where you abandoned yourself. Jung knew that healing begins the moment you stop treating your inner life as a battlefield and start treating it as a conversation. In this moment, the shadow steps closer, not ominously, gracefully, as if it senses that you are finally ready to hear what it has held for years. Its presence feels different now. It has lost its sharpness. You see in it not a creature of darkness, but the version of you who carried burdens you refused to acknowledge. This is the part that took your pain when you were too young to hold it. This is the part that protected you when the world felt too loud. As you study this figure, the forest outside shifts again, even though you are still within the room. You feel the scent of damp earth, as if the walls themselves have dissolved into trees. The air cools. Leaves rustle in a wind you cannot see. A beam of moonlight enters through an opening you did not notice earlier. The symbolic world of your psyche is merging with your conscious awareness. A mirror appears before you, not in the literal sense, but as a presence. You feel its weight. You sense its invitation. You know what it asks. When you look into it, you see not your physical face, but the emotional landscape you have carried for years. You see the exhaustion behind your smile. You see the tenderness you tried to hide. You see the anger that had no place to go. You see the longing for something you cannot name. The mirror does not accuse you. It reveals you. It shows the truth beneath your survival strategies. In psychological terms, this moment marks the confrontation with the personal shadow in its purest form. Not as an idea, as an experience. You are no longer observing your unconscious from a distance. You are standing within it. Your emotions become symbols. Your memories become pathways. Your patterns become stories waiting for interpretation. This is the place where the soul speaks in images, and you feel the gravity of that language as if it were ancient and written beneath your skin. The imagery intensifies. You see a fire in the center of the room, burning without smoke. The flames are steady, golden, alive. They represent transformation, not destruction. You feel the warmth of this fire on your hands. You realize that everything you avoided is being offered to this flame. Not to be erased, but to be purified. You see fragments of your past floating toward the fire like small paper lanterns. A moment you regret, a lie you told yourself, a fear that shaped your choices. Emotion becomes your answer. You do not speak. You feel, and the flame responds. It does not consume these fragments. It illuminates them. Each one brightens until its outline disappears. What remains is not the wound, but the wisdom hidden within it. You begin to understand that suffering is not a punishment. It is a message encoded in experience. The shadow kept these messages safe until you were strong enough to read them without breaking. You stepped closer to the fire. The shadow figure moves with you, matching your pace, not as a reflection, but as a companion who has waited for this precise moment. You watch as its edges blur, then clarify again, as if it is changing shape with your breath. It feels less like a separate being and more like a memory of yourself. A younger self, a wounded self, a fierce self, a forgotten self. It stands beside you as if to say that everything you feared was never meant to harm you. It was meant to return you to yourself. The forest appears once more around the room, but this time it is brighter. Moonlight reflects on the river. The trees shimmer with faint silver outlines. The path glows more clearly. You feel the presence of the night, not as darkness, but as sanctuary. You feel safe in this place that once frightened you. You feel guided, held, seen, and for the first time, you sense that the shadow is not testing you to see if you will fail. It is testing you to see if you will remain, if you will stay present with what rises, if you will choose truth over avoidance. A gentle shift moves through your chest, a subtle warmth, a slow breath you did not realize you were holding. The door you open no longer feels like an entrance into darkness. It feels like an entrance into depth, into wholeness, into the life you have not yet lived. The shadow stands beside you quietly, as if waiting for your next step. And somewhere deep within, you feel something new beginning to stir, preparing you for the next unfolding of your journey. You feel the final movement arrive not as a climax, but as a soft exhale, the kind that settles into your bones and tells you that something inside you has finally come home. The forest around you begins to fade into a gentler landscape, not disappearing, only softening, as if giving you space to breathe without the weight of symbols pressing against your skin. The flame before you steadies, becoming smaller, more intimate, like the quiet glow of a candle that warms a dark room. You sit with it, letting its light settle into the spaces within you that were once ruled by fear. You sense the shadow within you, no longer a figure walking beside you, no longer a presence standing behind you. It rests within your chest like a steady pulse. Its voice has become your intuition. Its strength has become your groundedness. Its depth has become your clarity. You feel no separation between what you once called darkness and what you now call truth. They blend into each other like the merging of night and dawn, a single horizon that does not need to choose between light and shadow to be whole. The forest becomes memory now, but not a fading one. It feels like a place you can return to whenever the noise of the world becomes too loud, whenever you forget the language of your own depth, whenever you feel yourself slipping back into patterns that once carried your wounds. You know the path now. You know the fog, the river, the fire, the altar, the tower, the chamber. You know how to walk through them without fear. You know how to meet yourself in places you once avoided. This knowing settles in your breath like a quiet anchor. As you rise from the field, you feel your body lighten, though not in a way that pulls you away from life. It roots you more deeply into it. You feel the weight of your experiences no longer as burden, but as balance. The world around you begins to reassemble. The trees soften into indistinct shapes. The river melts into silence. The flame dims into a quiet warmth that settles behind your sternum. You are not leaving the inner world behind. You are carrying it with you, woven into the fabric of your presence, into the rhythm of your steps, into the tone of your voice. Psychologically, this is the moment of return, not a retreat into old patterns, but a re-entry into life with new eyes. You carry your unconscious not as a shadow that threatens to spill into your actions, but as a companion that enriches your choices. The world does not change as you step toward it again, but you change the way you move through it. You no longer hide from emotions that rise without warning. You no longer run from fears that echo through familiar corridors. You understand them now. You greet them with compassion. You listen to them with steady breath. As you move forward, You feel the subtle presence of the future self you glimpsed in the chamber. Not a distant ideal, a quiet orientation, a direction of growth that unfolds with each moment of honesty you offer yourself. You sense that you will continue to meet new layers of your depth. You will continue to feel shadows rise. You will continue to face discomfort, but you know now that these movements are not signs of regression. They are invitations. They are reminders that the soul grows in spirals, not straight lines. You step fully out of the symbolic forest now. The world you know returns with its familiar shapes, its people, its rhythm, its demands. But something inside you remains untouched by noise. You carry a stillness, a clarity, a sense of inner companionship that was not available to you before. The shadow rests within you, integrated, softened, aligned. It no longer blocks your path. It walks with you. It no longer holds you back. It steadies your steps. It no longer overwhelms you. It deepens your presence. Before the final moment of this inner journey, you take one more breath. A slow one, a grounded one, a breath that feels like both an ending and a beginning. You feel the quiet truth rise like a whisper inside your chest. Healing is not the absence of shadow. It is the friendship between what you have feared and what you have become. It is the soft reconciliation between the person you tried to be and the person you truly are. You step into your life again, carrying light, carrying shadow, carrying the fullness of yourself. And in that gentle union, you feel a quiet peace settle into your being, as if the entire world has taken a breath with you, inviting you to walk forward with a softer heart, a clearer mind, a steadier soul. And beneath that breath, a single whisper lingers. You are home.